So USF, I think we only really talked about this for like 2 seconds last week because it was kind of a non-issue, right? This was a harder game than LIU, but nothing compared to the SEC stretch that was coming down the pipeline for Florida. We thought it was going to be a game where they had the opportunity to just kind of clean some things up in preparation for conference play. Did not turn out that way at all. USF did win 18-16. Will, what obviously the score is the most surprising thing, but what outside of the score really stood out to you as something that caught you off guard as somebody that follows the conference and Florida incredibly closely?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest thing is, the discipline and execution issues that Florida had. Like, the past 3 years, right? Those have been issues. And Billy's been saying, like, that's on me. It's on the coaches. We're getting it fixed. And he got some grace, and deservedly so, for, coming in, trying to fix the culture that Mullen had left. Because at that point, when Mullen left, it wasn't very good. But then to come out and have the same execution problems, that punt snap over the punter's head for his safety. I mean, you lost the game by 2 and you had that happen. That's not the only reason, but just small things like that. And the Brandon Bet spitting on the guy's face. I mean, I've seen everybody already bring this up. The fact that it happened on Thursday Night Football and then you come back and do it again on Saturday, just, I've never seen anything that, like, just mind-numbing in my life. Like, that was just such a bad mistake. And more on the ball side of it, like, they couldn't get the ball to their playmakers out wide. Or it seemed like maybe they weren't like trying to necessarily. Like Vernell Brown, when he got the ball in his hands, that punt return was awesome. When Trey Wilson got the ball in space, he was electric. And then all of a sudden, they can't stop throwing the ball to Hayden Hansen and Tony Livingston in the red zone. Like, it just feels like the emphasis offensively was going towards players that it just should not be going around. Jaden Ball, they went away from him like after that first drive where he had 50 yards and then he wasn't on the field during that fourth quarter drive to close the game out. Like, it just seemed like every decision made didn't make much sense. And I don't know if Florida wasn't prepared, if they were just kind of overlooking USF, which would be very bad after what they did to Boise. But just a lot of what Florida did this past weekend didn't make much sense to me.
So, you mentioned the spitting with bets and we all watched Jalen Carter get in trouble, get ejected on Thursday night. I feel like when I turned on ESPN for the next 2 days, that was the cover story. I mean, there were news organizations that don't cover sports covered the fact that happened. It was all over social media. But, the thing that I find interesting too, and I'm drawing a blank on who the player was, but do you remember 2 years ago, TJ, when Florida State and Florida played in the Swamp? We went together. Florida had a player spit on a Florida State player in that game too. And I just have such a hard time reconciling in my mind that I think Coach Napier does an incredible job with discipline off the field. We don't hear about Florida players getting arrested or skipping class or, being mean to their grandmother. Everybody does all the things that they are supposed to do behaviorally off the field. But I don't know that I can think of a more disrespectful thing to do to another human being than spit at them. It has never once ever crossed my mind in my 40 years on this planet to spit at another person. And the fact that it has happened on 2 Napier coach teams in 3 years is kind of wild to me. And I'm not saying that a head coach can control the emotional outbursts of every single guy that puts on a jersey for them. And I know that that's not realistic at all. But the fact that it's happened twice is still kind of concerning, right, TJ?
Yeah, and that was in a big moment too. It was Jamari Lyons when we were there. I would, and now it's the same exact impact, right? But I would be more okay if you swung on a guy, if you just punched him, right? Like it's the same thing. It's 15 yards. It's an ejection. You're out of the game. You probably missed the whatever.
Yes.
But like, I don't understand the whole spitting thing. And again, like I want to blame Napier because it's at the end of the day, it is his team. He'll take some blame for this for sure. But I don't understand, man, for a team that if we want to say some good things about Napier, which maybe UF fans don't want to hear that, man, culture is such a big thing. The way that they've stuck together, the way that they very rarely have guys jump in the portal, the way that the recruits and the players play hard for him, even when a season is deemed over and he's already been fired by the fan base and boosters and everything else. Like, he does such a good job with that. And then in these big moments, there is just absolutely no mental composure. And I think that's the biggest problem with Florida. From a coaching staff, from a play calling standpoint, from the actual players on the field, there's no mental, and sometimes it shows up, like it showed up against LSU and Ole Miss and Florida. There were some big games last year. But I think that when you really think about them, like, they have no ability to take a punch in the mouth and respond to that in a good way, a theoretical punch in the mouth, right? The LSU game, they got out early. The Ole Miss game, but when they get down, man, they just, from a coaching staff, from a player, from an execution standpoint, they just completely go into a shell, and then they start just being absolutely idiotic, snapping the ball over a guy's head. I mean, they're lucky that didn't turn into a touchdown. The punter, was able to get onto it. And then spitting on people, committing. I mean, they gave him 30 yards on that last drive. And then right past that, the guy is tackled in the backfield for a loss of 5 on a play that would have kept the clock running for USF. And he ends up with 35 yards down the sideline. It's just everything that you could imagine from a mental toughness standpoint doesn't exist with this team. Now, we'll talk about LSU later, and we'll talk about their chance to rebound. And so maybe they get it back. And everything I'm saying right now is wrong. But there is no mental toughness on this team. And then you were even texting me, after the game, I hate the way the players are responding to the spitting and stuff. And, again, PR, how much does that matter in the course of a game? I don't know. But I do think that, man, that's my biggest takeaway. Yeah, they should win on the line of scrimmage. Yeah, they should go back to ball more. Yeah, DJ should, looks a little rusty from not having practice. All those things are true. But still, man, it's USF. And I'm not trying to discount them. They're a ranked team, and I hope they win this weekend. But, man, this is still USF.
And I hope USF wins this weekend as well. But I think, honestly, the bigger issue is this. We have a coach. Is Golich in his second or third year as coach, maybe third season at USF. You have a team with talent that Florida didn't want, right? There's not a single person on that roster that Florida wanted, but USF stole. So there is a massive talent advantage for Florida. There is a massive resource advantage to Florida. There is a massive, and I'm talking everything from NIL to facilities to training table.
Staff size.
All of it. Florida has the advantage there. And they have a coach whose system has been in place a year longer. So you look at all of those things, and we can say, USF's a good team. Let's not discount this win. It's USF has beat Boise. They beat Florida. They put together a good team. But that's kind of the point, right? Napier has every single advantage, and the underdog put together the better team. I really think that's the whole point of all of this. They didn't get lucky. They were good. They watched Florida's film. They figured out where the holes were. They exploited it. They made adjustments on the fly. They were the better team, fighting with one hand behind their back, essentially. And, I want to comment on the Rocco Underwood snap for a second. I feel terrible that this is even something that is getting discussed, because this is a kid who had 2 bad snaps his entire career. Unfortunately, they've both come at really untimely, situations, and they've really hurt the team. But you're talking about the best long snapper in college football. And in a normal scenario where everybody is doing their job 9 times out of 10, your all-American long snapper having 1 bad snap doesn't affect the outcome of a game. But here we are in this situation. And, the penalties, we lauded Florida for having no penalties last week. We talked about how impressive it was, and especially considering the number of bodies that they just rotated in. Well, if we lauded it last week, we got to talk about it this week. 11, over 100 yards. It's inexcusable. And, I know Florida fans are not happy with some of the refs. I've gone back and watched some of the stuff. And are there some ticky-tack calls? Sure. Are you going to rely on the call being made correctly against USF? If so, that's a problem. And, TJ, you mentioned the looking ahead. Billy Napier, somebody mentioned in the comments, has never once started 2-0 at the University of Florida. In his 4 seasons there, he's never started 2-0. He has the same winning percentage today as he had 2 games into his first season at Florida. So I can't believe the looking ahead thing, because that makes my head explode. You haven't been good 1 game at a time, but you're going to look down the road. Like, we don't play games where we blow out the opponent generally. Florida plays close games, so looking ahead is asinine, right? I don't know. This is a disappointing from top to bottom. Well, did you listen to the press conference? Was there anything that was said by either Lagway or Napier that stood out to you?
I listened to some of it. Really, what kind of resonated with me is like in all these other times where there have been, bad losses or like they've gotten blown out, Napier's gone up there and he said, execution, we weren't prepared, all that. It's on the coaches, it's on me. We have to be better. That was refreshing at first to hear that accountability come from the coaching staff. In year 4, it's almost insulting to the fans because like sure, you can say you're going to go back and get better at this. It's been 4 years and nothing's really gotten better. So what are you actually doing during the practice weeks? I mean, yeah, there's just at a certain point where this just can't keep happening at the University of Florida or a change has to be made. And obviously we saw last year they turned it around. That this is supposed to be the most talented team that Napier's had. And it seems like all of that talk got to Florida. Like they heard all summer, everyone was telling them how pretty they were, how bought in everybody was, how they were a playoff team. And they kind of went out this weekend. JD Bickel put this really well. It seemed like they were obligated to play that game, not like they wanted to go out there and win that game.
Yeah.
So they kind of just went out there. They were sleepwalking. They're like, we're better than this team. We got LSU next week. Let's just get this done. And then they paid for it. And as a 17.5-point favorite at home, only scoring 16 points is pretty bad. Like even if you're not going out there with the attitude like this is a very important game, we have to go out there and step on their necks. It's just you really just can't do that ever, especially in the spot that Florida was in.
And you just saw them last week, right? Like you just saw them up, and I know Boise State is not Florida, right? But like you just saw them last week absolutely demolish a college football playoff team. Yes. And I get it. It's Boise State. Somebody's always going to get in from the playoff team. But Boise State they're similar to USF, man, and they beat the crap out of them. So if this would have happened in week 1 and everybody now it wouldn't make Gator fans feel any better, right? But if this would have happened in week 1 and USF just absolutely snuck up on you, I think that'd be one thing. Oh, shoot, like you got them in week 1. Weird things happen. Florida State beat Alabama in week 1. There's weird things that happen in this sport. But man, after watching them lay the wood to Boise State, like if that wasn't a wake-up call, then like what was? I mean, Allie, you had Andy Staples from On3 on your show preseason. Or maybe it was Andy or maybe it was Chris. Maybe it was Doring. I'll take that back. You had Chris on and he said, look, I know a lot of fans are getting, that USF game is not, I mean, he was saying that preseason. That USF game, they should win, but that ain't the cupcake that people think it is. Right. And so you had people that are associated
with that wake-up call to show us. Yes. Even if you didn't believe it when Doring said it or Staples said it or whatever else, you had to believe it when you watched it with your own eyes.
Yeah, so it's just, it's inexcusable. Now, all that said, it's week 2, and we will get to the LSU game in a minute. So they've got a chance. But man, you guys can answer this. They ain't got to be a lot of confidence that they are going to do it. Now, they did it last year, but man, it's daunting to lose this one. And if you had just snuck it out, if you just found a way late, if you didn't spit on a guy, if you make a tackle in the backfield, you probably just look back at it and say, hey, we found a way, right? Weird circumstances. USF's a good team. We found a way. Man, to not be able to close, they couldn't close in the red zone. They couldn't close on special teams, and they couldn't close that last drive.
We could say about 90% of Florida's losses over the last 4 years. We could make those exact statements and apply them to any of them. And TJ, you and I had this conversation off air yesterday. Tennessee last year is a really good example. Poor clock management, terrible success in the red zone, head scratching plays at the end. And, when it's a top 10 Tennessee, maybe you get a pass, right? They're like, okay, well, this is a top 10 team in the country and we played them close and we just couldn't get them done. Even though if you watch the game, you saw that like you shot yourself in the foot. It wasn't actually Tennessee. But when this is USF, it is more concerning, and it's year 4. This is the first home loss to a school from the state of Florida, not named Florida State or Miami, since 1938. Stetson
World War II
came to Gainesville to win. That's yes, pre-World War II. I mean, all these records falling all over the place here. It's embarrassing, but it is week 2. You're right, and in theory, this is a Florida team that could still go 9-3. That would require wins against teams we didn't think they were going to win because they got a loss against a team we didn't think they were going to lose to. I am not saying I think this is likely, but it is absolutely possible. But it's gut check time in week 2 for the Florida Gators, and that is not something any of us thought we were going to be sitting here and saying, and it makes the next 4-week stretch even more intimidating and even more important than it was a week ago.
Yeah, and Florida's gonna win some games. Like, I know it's all doom and gloom right now, but man, the gimmies don't even look like gimmies anymore, right?
I mean,
Mississippi
Ole
State
Miss,
looked good. Kentucky looked good. I mean, I had those penciled as easy Florida wins
Ole
before
Miss
the year.
struggled with
Oh,
Kentucky.
yeah.
Kentucky almost pulled that off.
Tennessee looks better, and we'll talk about that Tennessee-Georgia game in a little bit. Florida State looks all these games that I was like, Florida will win those. Like that, Florida will start out with bowl eligibility, and then their season will be dictated on the other 6 games. It doesn't look like that now, and they're going to win some of them, right? They're not going 1-11, but everything's going to be a battle at this point, unless they really do kick it up into gear and into overdrive. So,
which it may very well happen, but it still requires then an inward look at why does Florida start so slowly every single season? You have 9 months to prepare for this, and we talk about looking ahead. They probably would have been okay overlooking LIU and looking ahead to USF. If you were going to look ahead to something, you could have done that, but you had 9 months, and this is the product you're currently putting on the field with guys that are not playing up to their talent potential. We know what this team is made of.